Our first speaker tonight is Doreen O'Mahony, and Doreen is going to tell us an unusual story of how she has travelled along the road to digital Damascus. Ladies and gents, Doreen O'Mahony.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks a million. Thanks for inviting me here tonight, Aidan. Just on one of the things you were talking about there on meaningful connections, I did the Smarter Egg course about 4 or 5 years ago, and a few of us continued to meet after the course was finished. The course was absolutely brilliant because you sat around and you discussed lots of different books, but it was mainly kind of afterwards you'd have lots of arguments and things like that, and they're the bits I enjoyed the best. And a few of us continued to meet up, and there is our latest meeting. And now we've kind of turned it into a kind of a book club / come dine with me night. So that was my evening and I really enjoyed it, and we've got 3 more to go. So John, who's in the audience, he's going to be coming up soon. So looking forward to that. So it's not just, you know, smarter circles. You can have lots of fun with book clubs and things like that. But tonight's talk anyway is kind of how I got to my job today, which is Digital Brand Manager of Leia Healthcare. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the road to that, as Aidan mentioned, a road that started with this. This is the view from my house at home. I took that photograph a few months ago, but that's literally what I see when I look out the window. I grew up in a place called Ballincollig, which is between Ballincollig and Skibbereen, and it's about as far from digital as you can get. It's really beautiful, and you know, growing up, this is me. Sorry, these are my sisters and my brother and I, and that's me. I haven't changed much, have I? I had that haircut till I was about 14 years old, and my sister told me one day that if I didn't grow out my fringe, I'd never get a boyfriend. So, so I grew it out. But our childhood was pretty idyllic. I grew up in the 80s, and it was the time of Bosco, and it was the time of playing tip the can out in the garden and hide and seek and things like that. We never had iPads or iPhones or anything like that growing up. It was a much simpler time. But if we thought that our time was quite simple, you know, my grandparents, who lived just up the road from us, their time was even more simple. And they were the first. Now, this isn't them. This is just a picture of a black and white TV. But they were the first people in Lisaclorig, the townland, to actually get a television. And every evening, when the cows were milked and supper was eaten, people used to knock on the door of the house and come in to watch television because it was such a big deal. Nobody had television sets. And it was a real social occasion. People would sit around kind of discussing what it was that Radio Telefisherm were putting out that day. So it was a really interesting time. It was also a time of my dad. He was born in 1953, and in Ireland that time, you know, there was a lot of changes going on politically and everything because it was the Lamass era. So there was a bit of a step away from, you know, the dancing at the crossroads from De Valera, and a bit of a movement towards the EU. And the tax breaks that we see now, they were probably the first tax breaks that were happening in the 50s. So it was a very, very different time. And electrification had, you know, just been in as well. Well, I suppose that was a bit later, or that was a bit earlier rather. But anyway, that was sort of my father's generation. That was the backdrop of that. But the reason I'm showing this picture is because this phone stayed in the hallway of our house. And every time we wanted to make a phone call, you'd literally put your finger in and twirl the dial around and basically dial the 10 phone numbers you had from your 10 classmates who were in your school, because you didn't really know that many people because you were in rural Ireland. But technology has really, really changed. You know, the kind of communication that we would have had back then, it's really moved on. When I went to school in Mount St. Michael, Rosscarbery, and I actually boarded there. and we used to go home every weekend. So for us, the phone was really, really important in school. But the phone was a little bit better then, because then you had push dial. So it wasn't the twirly one, it was the one where you could actually push it. So things were a small bit better. But it was quite difficult to have phone calls because, you know, the phone was in the hall of the convent board in the boarding school. So there'd be girls running up and down the corridor and nuns running up and down the corridor. So you couldn't really talk very much. And it's very, very different to what things are like now. But school finished, and in 1998 I went on to college and I went to the University of Limerick, where I studied history, politics and social studies. And the phones also graduated, and that was the phone that I had in first year. It was, and I think there's probably worse phones than that. That's not even bad considering some phones that are around. But I thought I was really cool anyway when I had that phone. And I was the only girl in my house that had a mobile phone. So my two friends from home, their families used to ring me on my phone just to check in with them and see how they were getting on. But so as my career I'm still in college at this point, obviously, using a phone. But so for 4 years, I studied history, politics and social studies. And then the time came to think about getting a job. But unless you want to teach, there isn't a whole lot you can do with history, politics and social studies. And so I took a year out and worked for a while with the senator. And then I worked doing a bit of accounts payable and things like that. And I said, this isn't for me, I need to go back to college. So I went back to college and I did a HDip in Limerick as well. And I studied, you know, everything from economics to HR, to management information systems, to marketing, to advertising. And when I finished that, I thought, great, I've studied all these things. Now I'll definitely get a job. But I suppose the thing about that is that you have a real qualification, or you have a real education, and you're not actually qualified in anything. It's not like you're a nurse and you can go and work in a hospital. You have this really great education, but it's very difficult to know where and what to do with it. And so I decided to take a temporary job, and I worked in the HSC in the Midwestern area in Limerick. And I suppose I just thought, right, I'll do this for a few months, and in the meantime, I'll keep applying for other jobs. And so I did the job, and it was an interesting job. I worked at the Department of Public Health Nursing, and I worked with fantastic people. And I know the HSC, people often say really bad things about it, but I think it depends on the department that you're in. And for me, I worked with a real trailblazer, and she really kind of taught me a lot about management and about people and just getting the best out of them and things like that. But while I was there, I was applying for all these other jobs in HR and economics and all the other things I had studied. And I was getting rejection after rejection. And, you know, this went on for probably about 3 years, where I kept going for these interviews in all these random areas. And I kept getting these rejection letters. And sometimes people would ring me and go, Doreen, we thought you were really good, you came second. And then I'd be kind of like, right, so I don't get the job. Oh, great. So, and I think that can happen. Sometimes when you come out of college, you think, oh, it's going to be really easy. And, you know, and I know that interns nowadays, or not interns, people who graduate from college nowadays, they think that it's an easy path, but it's not. It's much harder because they have to do internships and figure out what it is they want to do. So after about 3 years where I'm constantly getting these rejections, I decided, right, it's actually time now to go back and think about what it was you really enjoyed, so that you can see, is there a job you can get out of that? And because I had always loved English and history in school, I thought, well, maybe a career in journalism or public relations or something like that would be suitable for me. And when I was in college, one of the things that I had done was I was PRO of the College History Society. And we had done lots of things. Like, for example, I jumped into the River Shannon on the Jerry Ryan show to raise awareness. And, you know, sorry? No, they actually built me a proper little thing. And yeah, it was, well, I can swim, but I was being dunked. I was a witch, you know. And I had to play a character, the things I did for that society. And anyway, we did a Viking reenactment and things like that. And I realized that those kind of things, that I really enjoyed doing them, so surely I could get a career out of it. So I decided, and I was still living in Limerick at the time, but I was from Cork. So I sent my CV to every single PR agency in Cork, thinking, surely now one of them will give me a call. And sure enough, one of them did. It was Fusion Communications. And I got an email from Deirdre Waldron, who owned the company. And she said, why don't you come down for an interview? And I was really excited, but then part of me was like, Doreen, you've gone for so many interviews, don't get your hopes up too much. So I went down anyway, and I met Deirdre in her home in Ballincollig, where they were at the time, which is where the company was. And she interviewed me for about over an hour anyway, and kind of asking me all about, what are you doing in the HSC? You studied history, and would you not do something different? And I was telling her all about the History Society and things like that. And then her partner, who's now her husband, Greg, came home, and he proceeded to interview me for another hour and a half. So I was there for about 3 hours, and then the dog came in, who was living in the house, and I kind of had an interview with him as well, because they wanted to see how I interacted with the dog. But I was driving back up the road to Limerick, and I was like, God, this is just bizarre. Like, did that actually just happen, And about a week later, I got a phone call from Greg saying, we really want you to join the team. And for me, that was just incredible, because, when you try for ages and then you finally get your break and you're like, wow, this is brilliant. And I just loved it. I packed up my bag, left my permanent and pensionable job, took a pay cut and started in a career that I had absolutely zero experience in. Because I was working for a small company and from their home, I learned absolutely everything. When you work for a small company, you're pitching for clients, you're sending out press releases, you're following up, you're learning the whole time. It's not like when you move into a big agency and you're answering the phone for the first 2 years. You literally have to do everything. And it was around 2010. I'd been with the company for about 2 and a bit years. And we started to see a bit of a change in PR, and we started to realize that social media was becoming more and more important. And Greg was saying to me, Doreen, you should really set up your own Facebook page, probably because I came from the country, I was allergic to Facebook and I didn't like the idea of it at all. And I just thought, no, it's way too intrusive. But I told him that instead of setting up a Facebook page, I would set up a LinkedIn profile and a Twitter page. And so I started my Twitter page in 2010. And I suppose in terms of, a digital Damascus, that was certainly my moment, because I could see all the journalists, all the researchers, all the TV personalities. They were all there right at my desk, and I could tweet them, and because there was not that many people on Twitter in 2010. And, for me, getting stories from my clients, it was really, really easy, because I could see exactly what they were looking for. They'd be putting out tweets saying, I'm looking for a piece on tourism or something, and I go, oh, I can put you in touch with somebody. So it was really working for me. And then we got asked to pitch for a client called Plan Ireland. I don't know, are you aware of Plan Ireland? Great, that's brilliant. So they're a development agency, and they work with children in developing nations all around the world. And their problem was that not many people at the time had heard of them, and they wanted more and more people to know about them. So we wrote a PR plan, and we wrote Facebook and Twitter and all that into it. And then we went to pitch for the business in Dublin, and I sat in a room with the CEO, David Dalton, and with the head of marketing and with the head of sponsorship, and we went through the plan and everything, and they really liked the plan. But when it came to the social media element, they were like, no, we're not interested. We don't have the resources. We need people to give us money. We can't start managing all these things now. It's too hard. And we said, that's fine. We'll just do the traditional PR. We won't necessarily do the social media. We were lucky enough to land the account. That was in September. And then in January the following year, this happened, the Haiti disaster. And so for us, we took a two-pronged approach, and we said, right, we can communicate to all of the children there was a few children who were sponsored by people in Ireland, and we were able to find out exactly where they were from Plan International, who were working on the ground. And we were able to let everyone in Ireland know who sponsored children in Haiti that they were actually okay. We were also able to give people updates, regular updates on what was happening. We launched an appeal on Facebook and we launched an appeal on Twitter, and we were able to start getting Plan Ireland in the same bracket as Plan International, as Trócaire and Foreign Aid and people like that. So for the first time ever, this charity was seen in the same eyes as the other more established charities, and I really believe that social media helped with that. Not only were we able to talk to our consumers through the Facebook and Twitter pages, but I was able to start landing stories. People like Gerard Gilroy would be on a plane out there and he'd be saying, you know, Charlie Bird's on the plane with me. So then I'd tweet them straight away and say, I can organise interviews with Plan International on the ground. Do you want that? And obviously they were going to say yes. So we had David Dalton on the Sunday Business Post. We had him on the radio. We had him, I need to round this up. So basically, the next year they were far more open to hearing from us in terms of social media, and we started a blog for them. And that blog eventually became a website. And my career moved on. I didn't have much time to talk. I didn't realize it was going to take that long. So we all grew up anyway, and my career changed. I went to Irish Guide Dogs for a year, and then I went to media manager. And one day a guy called me who had seen my profile on LinkedIn, and he told me about the job in Leia Healthcare, and that's where I work now. So sorry about the long-winded end there, Aidan. But what I would say to you is social media, it certainly got me the job that I have today as digital brand manager of Leia Healthcare. A lot of risks along the way for sure, but really enjoying it.